Imagine you're standing on the American Great Plains. The year is 1870, and stretching out in front of you, as far as you can physically see in every direction, are bison. 60 million of them, the single largest concentration of large mammals on Earth at that time. More meat than you could eat in 1,000 lifetimes. More hides than every leather workshop in America could process in a century. So naturally, someone looks at that and thinks, what if we just farmed them? And here's the thing. They tried. Serious ranchers, real scientists, men who had already tamed some of the wildest land in the world. Men who had staked their money, their reputations, and years of their lives on the belief that the bison could be the next great livestock animal. Every single one of them failed. And today, while over 100 million domestic cattle graze calmly across this country, the bison is still, at a genetic level, completely wild. But why? Because the answer reaches back to the Ice Age. It involves a physiological phenomenon that can kill an animal before you even touch it. It involves one of the most ambitious and quietly devastating crossbreeding experiments in American history. And it ends with a conclusion that will permanently change how you look at every farm animal you've ever seen. Let's go. Before we get into bison, we need to clear something up, because most people have the wrong idea about what domestication actually is. They think it just means taming an animal, catching it, training it not to bite you, putting it in a pen. That's not domestication. That's just babysitting a wild animal with extra steps. Real domestication is something far more permanent. It's a genetic transformation, one that takes hundreds, sometimes thousands of years, and it doesn't just change how an animal behaves. It changes its body, its brain, its biology at the deepest level. Think about your dog for a second. Dogs didn't just get friendlier over time. Their skulls changed shape. Their ears started flopping forward. Their brains actually shrank in certain regions tied to fear and aggression. They became physically incapable of surviving without humans. Scientists call this domestication syndrome. And you can see it everywhere once you know what to look for. Shorter snouts, different coat colors, reduced stress hormones, changed reproductive cycles. Now here's the important distinction, and remember this because it changes everything later in this video. There's a massive difference between a tamed animal and a domesticated one. A tamed animal is just a wild animal that's gotten comfortable around you. The wildness is still in there, buried, waiting. A domesticated animal has had the wildness bred out of it over generations. It's a genuinely different creature at the DNA level. And the moment you understand that distinction, you start to see exactly why bison were never domesticated. Because bison aren't just wild on the surface. They're wild all the way down. And to understand why, we need to go back about 10,000 years. Here's something that surprises most people. The calm, slow-moving animals you see on every farm today are descended from one of the most dangerous wild animals that ever lived in Europe. They were called aurochs. And Julius Caesar, a man who conquered most of the known world, personally wrote that they were barely smaller than elephants and nearly impossible to subdue. They had horns spanning over 6 feet. Roman soldiers used them in arenas as spectacle, because watching something fight an auroch was that dramatic. So how did early farmers turn that into a dairy cow? The auroch had a hidden weakness, not in its body, but in its mind. It lived in smaller herds, had predictable territories, and it operated on a social pecking order, a clear chain of command within the herd. Early farmers figured out something remarkable. Raise an auroch calf around humans from birth, and it doesn't see humans as predators. It sees them as the dominant members of its social group, the ones at the top of the order. And once you're at the top, you start deciding which animals breed, which ones live, which calves are calmest. Do that for a few hundred generations and the auroch slowly transforms. The aggression fades, the fear shrinks. 10,000 years of that process and you get a Holstein dairy cow. Now the question is, why couldn't humans do the same thing with bison? Here's where it gets interesting. While aurochs evolved in European forests with limited territory and manageable predators, the ancestors of the American bison did something completely different. They crossed from Asia into North America and found themselves on the open Great Plains. No forests to hide in, No rivers to shelter near, just flat, exposed land in every direction, and some of the most fearsome predators that have ever existed on this planet. Saber-toothed cats. Giant short-faced bears larger than any bear alive today. Dire wolves hunting in coordinated packs. And natural selection responded brutally. It gave bison explosive speed. Hypervigilance so sensitive that a shadow in the wrong place could trigger a stampede of thousands. And an aggression that didn't wait for a threat to get close before responding. The auroch had a social structure that humans could step into and exploit. The bison had an evolutionary fortress that humans simply could not breach. And we're about to find out exactly how impenetrable that fortress really is. Scientists have mapped out the specific traits that make an animal domesticable. It's essentially a checklist. Bison fail almost every item on it. And each failure is more surprising than the last. First, the flight zone. Every animal has a flight zone, the distance at which it starts feeling threatened and prepares to run or fight. Domestic cattle, after thousands of years of selective breeding, have a flight zone of just a few feet. You can walk right up to them. They barely react. Bison have a flight zone that can stretch beyond 100 yards. Picture this, you're standing at one end of a football field. The bison is at the other end. And it's already watching you, already calculating. Now imagine that animal is inside a corral. And it can't run. That's when the charging starts. That's when the walls come down. Second, warning signs. With cattle, an attack comes with plenty of advance notice. They paw the ground. They lower their head. They give you a slow display that says, back up, or this is going to get bad. Bison? Almost no warning. One moment it's standing still. The next, it's moving at full speed directly at you. Yellowstone National Park keeps detailed injury records. And the data is striking. Bison injure more visitors than any other animal in the park. More than grizzly bears. More than wolves. In 80% of those incidents, the bison gave almost no visible warning before the charge. People don't even realize what's happening until it's already happening. Third, and this is the one that genuinely stops people. Picture this. You've spent months raising a bison calf. Fed it by hand. Watched it grow into a 1,500-pound animal that mostly tolerates your presence. One day you need to move it, so you load it into a transport trailer. Standard procedure. You've done it with cattle 100 times. The trailer door closes. Within minutes, the bison lies down. His breathing becomes labored. His heart rate surges. And then its heart stops. You didn't hit it. You didn't hurt it. You just put it in an enclosed space. That's a real phenomenon called capture myopathy. When bison are forced into confined spaces, the body launches a catastrophic stress response. Cortisol floods the bloodstream. Blood pressure spikes. Body temperature surges. And in severe cases, the muscles begin to break down from the inside. The animal's own physiology destroys it. Cattle can be run through handling chutes every few weeks with no lasting effects. Bison can die from the experience of being handled. That's not a behavioral problem you train away. That's biology. That's evolution saying this animal was never designed to be contained. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, the behavior is extreme, but surely if you built a strong enough structure, you could at least contain one and work from there. Here's the thing. There is no structure strong enough. And I don't mean that as a figure of speech. A mature bison bull weighs over 2,000 pounds. That number sounds slow, heavy, manageable. It is none of those things. A bison can sprint at 40 miles per hour. For context, Usain Bolt, during his world record run, peaked at about 28 miles per hour. A bison would have left him behind before the first bend. But speed alone isn't the surprising part. A bison can jump a 6-foot fence. From a standing start. Not running. Standing. Want to picture that? Stack 2 average NBA players on top of each other. That's roughly 6 feet off the ground when you're looking up at it. A bison clears that from a complete standstill. Bison also have an extra set of ribs compared to cattle, 14 pairs versus 13. That additional space gives them significantly more lung volume, which is exactly what powers those long, sustained sprints. There are documented observations of a bison bull crossing an 8-foot-wide cattle guard, the wide steel grate built into roads specifically to stop livestock from crossing, by simply hopping over it without touching a single bar. Standard cattle fencing is 4 feet high. Bison don't slow down for it. So containing bison requires 6 to 8 foot steel fencing with reinforced concrete posts. Standard cattle handling chutes, the metal corridors used to move livestock, get buckled when a bison hits them at speed. Bison facilities need solid steel walls, hydraulic squeeze systems, and crash gates built to absorb a 2,000-pound impact. The infrastructure alone costs several times more than a standard cattle operation. And still, they get out. So at this point, you'd think humans would have looked at all of this and said, fine, forget it, we'll stick with cattle. But they didn't. What they tried next was something far more ambitious and far more heartbreaking. They decided to stop trying to tame the bison and instead change what the bison fundamentally was. Charles Goodnight was one of the most respected ranchers in Texas history. He had already done things that seemed impossible. He'd blazed cattle trails across desert and hostile territory. He'd built ranching operations that others said couldn't survive. He was not a man who gave up easily. And in the late 1800s, as wild bison were being slaughtered toward extinction, Goodnight believed he was standing at the edge of something historic. His idea was simple on paper. Capture bison calves. Cross them with domestic cattle. Combine the bison's legendary toughness, its ability to survive brutal winters, resist disease, thrive on rough land, with the calm productivity of domestic livestock. The result, he believed, would be the greatest livestock animal America had ever seen. He wasn't the only one who thought so. A man named C.J. Buffalo Jones was doing the same thing across Kansas, traveling the plains capturing live calves, breaking some young bison to harnesses, even trying to use them as work animals. He called the hybrid offspring Catalo and marketed it as the future of American ranching. Both men were serious. Both men were experienced. Both men poured years of work and significant money into the project. And both men ran headfirst into a biological wall they never saw coming. Problem 1, the calves. When a bison bull mated with a domestic cow, the offspring were too large, specifically in the shoulders. The bison's characteristic hump is built on unusually large bones in the upper back, and those bones passed directly to the hybrid calves. Domestic cows simply weren't built for that. The births became emergencies. Cows died. Calves died. The losses were so severe that continuing the program meant constantly replacing the cattle that didn't survive. Problem 2, genetics. Every single first-generation male hybrid was completely sterile. This is a biological law called Haldane's rule. When two species that split apart millions of years ago try to crossbreed, the male offspring of that union are infertile. Every time, without exception, you couldn't breed the hybrids forward. Every generation had to start from scratch. Problem 3, the one that truly ended it. The hybrid animals kept all the difficult traits. Still aggressive, still fence breakers, still dangerous to handle. The cattle genetics didn't soften the wildness. It just made the animal slightly smaller and slightly less efficient at surviving winter. The 20th century saw one more attempt, a registered breed called Beefalo, defined as 3/8 bison and 5/8 domestic cattle. Genetic studies published just a few years ago found something striking. Most animals registered as Beefalo have no detectable bison ancestry at all. The bison genetics had been so thoroughly diluted through years of backcrossing that they had essentially vanished from the bloodline. Goodnight and Jones hadn't created the next great livestock animal. They had slowly, generation by generation, erased the bison from the experiment entirely. Now here's the part that surprises people most, because you might think the story ends there. Biology wins. Humans give up. Done. But here's the biggest surprise. Even if scientists somehow solved every behavioral and biological problem tomorrow, ranchers would probably still not switch from cattle. Here's why. Modern agriculture runs on one principle above everything else: efficiency. And domestic cattle are efficiency machines, built over 10,000 years specifically to maximize output and minimize cost. A modern dairy cow produces up to 30,000 pounds of milk in a single lactation cycle. The system to collect it is fully automated and standardized. Now try milking a bison. A bison cow's udder is small, tucked tight against her body, and covered in thick hair. Evolved to prevent frostbite on open winter plains. Attaching a milking machine triggers an immediate stress response. Violent kicking. The milk stops flowing. And if you're in the wrong position when that kick lands, it's a serious injury. Bison are not a dairy animal. Not even slightly. For meat, modern beef breeds like Angus or Hereford gain weight rapidly on grain-based diets. Bison gain weight more slowly. They invest energy into dense bone and structural muscle rather than fast-accumulating fat. And every winter, bison slow down metabolically, just like wild animals do, making their growth rate unpredictable in ways that make commercial planning nearly impossible. Then there's the processing plant. Standard beef facilities are physically engineered around domestic cattle. The bison's shoulder hump creates a non-standard carcass shape that disrupts automated butchering systems. The skull is so thick and dense that standard stunning equipment sometimes fails on the first attempt. Every stage of the supply chain needs to be rebuilt from scratch for bison. Meanwhile, cattle were already there, already calm, already fitting perfectly into every existing system. The honest economic answer to why bison were never domesticated is simply, why would anyone choose the harder, more expensive, more dangerous option when the easier one was already working perfectly? Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because there is a modern bison industry. Over 500,000 bison are raised on private ranches across North America right now. But what makes it work is the complete opposite of what you'd expect. Successful bison ranchers don't try to control bison. They accommodate them. They use bait, sweet feed, and grain to lure herds voluntarily into pastures, instead of driving them with horses and dogs. They handle bison as infrequently as possible, sometimes only once a year, because every unnecessary handling event is a potential stress death event. They keep bison on vast open rangeland where the animals move naturally, behave as they always have, and graze on native forage just as their ancestors did for thousands of years. The entire philosophy is built around one insight. You do not control a bison. You create conditions where a bison chooses to be where you need it. And here's the final detail that most people never hear. Even on the most established, well-managed bison ranches in North America, experienced ranchers often have a standing rule that no one walks into the same open pasture as a mature bull on foot. Not because they're careless, because they're experienced. After years of working with these animals, they still don't fully trust them. And the bison have given them every reason for that caution. These animals on ranches behind specialized fencing, managed by professionals, are genetically identical to the bison that roamed the Great Plains 10,000 years ago. The wildness never left, and never even dimmed. So here's where we land. The American bison was never domesticated, not from a lack of trying, not from a lack of ambition, not from a lack of technology. It was never domesticated because the bison is the product of an evolutionary process that spent hundreds of thousands of years building the perfect survival machine. Every adaptation that makes a bison magnificent, the speed, the power, the hypervigilance, the stress response so extreme it can kill the animal before you even hurt it, is the exact same adaptation that makes it impossible to farm. And I want to leave you with one image. Every calm cow you've ever seen on a farm exists because humans changed an animal, shaped it, bred out its wildness generation by generation until almost nothing wild remained. Every bison standing on the open plains today exists because nature refused to let that happen. Evolution didn't build the bison to serve humans. It built the bison to outlast everything. One animal was transformed by human ambition. The other simply wouldn't be. If this changed how you see domestication or the animals around you, drop a comment. Which part hit hardest? The stress death? The failed hybrids? Or the fact that even the most experienced ranchers today still won't share a field on foot with a mature bull? And if you want more deep dives into the hidden science behind the world around you, you know what to do.